listener production.
The creators of this podcast would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which it is recorded. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are the first storytellers of this land. We pay respect to their elders, past, present and emerging, as well as any Indigenous people who may be listening today.
Everyone relax. This is TOFOP. I'm Charlie Clausen.
I'm Will Anderson. Hello, and thank you for watching.
Yes, and thank you for everyone who supports us on Patreon. That is our major benefactor at the moment. Sure, we've gone commercial. We've sold out to the man. We're dancing for the greenbacks, but we haven't really. I feel like
we're doing worse because I think there's no ads in our show.
No ads.
We're trying to get our shit together. But you know, the problem is when you've been a mess for so long, like you've got to earn people's trust back that you're a reliable product.
That's right.
Right?
We are the brother-in-law who was always sleeping on the couch, needed to borrow money, never knew when he was going to turn up.
We're going through we got into podcasting early in the wild days when it was all rock and roll and drugs. We thought we were going to live forever. And then the man came in and started commercializing it, man. And we probably missed our opportunity. We were one of those, so we're trying to get our shit together, but we've got to right some wrongs. We're on a podcast business 12-step recovery program where we have to prove to people for a while that we've got our shit together. Like we can't expect that we suddenly put all our podcasts in the one feed, get them out regularly, and some of it starts to make the numbering starts to make sense.
Have a strategy with when we release certain episodes.
We know that. We know what we're doing. But it's hard for us to expect just because we've changed for everybody else to immediately know that we have changed. So I think we now have to prove to people that this isn't just a phase that we're going through.
Yeah, we're here. We're here. Yeah. We've cleaned up our act. We want to marry you. That's what we're saying.
We're here.
We're down on one knee. Come on. You're getting close to 40. We're both a bit desperate. We need to make this work because there are not a lot of options out there.
I mean, I love the idea that you said I'm getting close to 40, by the way.
No, as in metaphorically speaking, where people freak out when they get close to 40 and then they're like, I need to find someone to marry or have a baby with.
I thought you were talking about me. I was like, that'd be great if I was close to 40. No. I'm as far away from 40 as you can get while still being in 40.
The good news is our podcast metaphorically is near 40. The bad news is in real life, you're closer to 50 and it's all bad.
What does that make it in, say the dog years, horse years sort of thing?
Okay,
so if you're saying that 13 years is the equivalent of being 40,
so it's 4 years.
Going to infuriate Adam Spencer.
Well, it's close to 4 years, maybe less, 3.5 years. For every human year is 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, that's suitably confusing. So
is that right? Yeah.
Let's, you know what?
Well,
let's just round up a little.
3 times 13 is 39.
3. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's right. You're approaching 40. That's so let's just say yes. 1 year in podcasting is 3 podcasting years.
Yeah. No, podcasting in life is 3 years in podcasting.
Yeah.
So
I get that.
Yeah, it's grown up so quick. And so now our podcast is.
Well, that makes a lot of sense in our journey too, because at the start it was very infantile.
Very infantile. And then we got sort of emo and teenage.
Yeah.
It was all dark and stuff. And then we sort of we decided we wanted to go to art school. That's when Fosdyke started doing the episode art.
Totally. Yeah.
And a lot of exploring. There was a lot of dicks.
You had a gap year.
Yeah. We tried a few relationships. We dated with Planet Broadcasting.
That's
we dated with Wooshka.
We had some open relationships with each other. Started seeing some other people.
Had friends come and go. We went our own separate ways. I mean, I guess we sort of, we did different things. We did our own separate streams, and now we're desperate because we feel the cold hand of mortality wrapping around our throat, and it's like, we need some security. We need some income. We need a permanent place, and we need a partner we can rely on. The partner is the audience. The income is Patreon and any sponsorship we get. But we're serious. We've got our shit together.
And you know what I love as well is we went our separate ways, but there was never any breakup. So one of the things that's always fascinated with me with the former FOFOP, now TOFOP with Friends, available in this TOFOP feed. If you like that show, you can go to our Patreon page, which is what this great riff is all about. But
I know I've got a great button for this riff, but keep going.
If there were, like, when we did our own separate things, even when we were doing FOFOP, like separately, like, so, you know, we were each hosting that, it was always interesting to me, like, we never discussed it. But it wasn't like a breakup because it wasn't a breakup. Like, I think if it was a breakup, much like in a breakup, you might go, well, I'm going to kind of be closer to this friend. They're going to be there for me. Whereas like that friend is going to be there for you. We didn't divide up
our friends like assets.
At all. In fact, some of them absolutely floated across both of us, which I was always like, I never knew if that meant anything. I mean, there was...
No, it's good. It means we've got some all-rounders in our friendship group. Utility players, swing men and women.
Yeah.
That's true. I never thought about it like that. I mean, I feel like I'm a real swing man. I don't think I'm anyone's like starting 18. Or maybe... I'd say like I'm in some.
What do you mean?
No, sorry.
You're TOFOP starting 18.
Yeah, no.
You're the key partner in this. Like, I mean, it's you and I.
No, sorry, I'm talking.
And then we have an extended TOFOP family, but we're a team, man.
Yeah.
You're like first picked on this team.
I'm talking in friendship. Like you were talking about, we have friends who are swingmen. I'm thinking about my friendship groups, and I don't really know that I have like a best friend, but I have like alternating best friends. There's people I spend more time with
in different situations.
Yeah, so I think that's me. I'm the utility player. Like I've been on a lot of people's podcasts, friends.
You two are well.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's right.
You're like I think this of Cameron James. In fact, so Cameron. So this doesn't feel like I'm speaking out of school in any way about something that I've said to Cam. Cam works on Gruen. He does a day of writing on Gruen a week, and Cam and Alexi are back, by the way, with a brand new podcast, Special Features, which is hilarious. Alexi had this riff in an episode they were doing, it will be a couple of weeks ago when people are hearing this, but it's a new podcast. You should check it out. But about Jerry Maguire and Jeremy Guire, how he thought his name was Jeremy Guire, and it was making me laugh. The idea of this guy, Jeremy Guire. And like, oh my God, it was so fun. Anyway, I recommend you check that out. But I think that I was saying to Cam as a compliment, but I call him the chameleon. And the reason for that is that his sense of humor almost adapts to situations. So when he's on with Alexi, like he just goes so easily into Alexi's world and that sense of humor. But when he comes and does a day on Gruen, he so easily just transforms into what we need for that job, which isn't necessarily that other thing. And when you hear him with Becky Lucas, he's like got a different energy because he like fits into, and he just has this great, like he's very good at like going into a situation, immediately knowing what the other person needs, but also being able to not just facilitate that other person, but be equally good in that scenario or in that situation.
He's the talented Mr. James. You can just insert him into any situation he assimilates, almost to an unsettling level of skill.
Yeah, like he's a scroll. He's a scroll. Rip his face off. He's a scroll.
That's a good skill set to have.
Yeah, right.
I mean, but you would have gears that you work in. I mean, a TOFOP is one 100%. Gear, Gruen is another gear. Like you would adapt depending on the.
Oh no, I think I'm pretty good in everybody's worlds. Like I tend to be able to recognize. It's why, like, I do a whole bunch of different radio things, publicity wise, for the telly shows, and you'll be speaking to everyone because of the nature of those shows. You often have very. So my Wednesday, which is my press day, like I can go from talking to, having like huge, like funny, like bizarre riffs with like Nova Breakfast in Perth, who are just this like absolutely bananas breakfast show that's been doing it for 15 years, who I just absolutely love and will riff about whatever's happening in the background of the Zoom and whatever, to ABC, half an hour with Richard Glover seriously talking about the issues behind the stories we're talking about on Gruen, to like somebody who wants to talk to you about the footy on the weekend because that's the way they're going to plug Gruen. And so I think, yes, like going into those situations and knowing what they need from me in those situations. But I would think probably that I'm still mostly me.
Yeah.
I just know which me to bring to those situations. Yeah. Whereas I think Cam has like a skill that is like, I think if you walked into a room and I'm doing like a footy interview, I can say all the things that would make them laugh and whatever. But if someone came in and said, which one of these people doesn't belong in the studio, you'd immediately point to me and go, it's that one. It's clearly that guy. Whereas with Cam, I don't think if you didn't know that he did a podcast with Becky Lucas, you just assume Cam is the Cam you hear with Alexi on his podcast or vice versa. And it is a little talented, Mr. Ripley. Like, it's one of those things that if he wasn't using it for comedy, he could definitely use it for evil. Right?
Yeah. I think I have an element of being able to do, I can talk to anyone. Like, I do not get intimidated by having a conversation with anyone on any topic. Like, I quite enjoy it. I won't say I'm good at returning the conversation, but I'm good at listening to people talk about stuff that I either have not thought about or I'm not good at, and I can keep the ball in the air. And the one thing—
Well, do you know why it is? I think.
Why?
Here's my observation, because we had an example of this recently, which is we were talking to Elias and for a series that's going to be on the TOFOP feed about the biggest stories in all of Norway. And neither of us knew him before we went into this interview, and he's, in a different country. He has English as his second language, and he's telling us stories about his life. And in that situation where the two of us are essentially interviewing someone, trying to keep the ball in the air with somebody, we don't really ever use those skills together.
That's right.
Like, in that situation, it was probably the first time really we'd done something like that. And I was interested to observe the different ways that we did that. And what I noticed is, and this is not, this will sound,
oh God.
No, this will, no, honestly, no, this is good. Like, this is something I admire. Like, I need to say this up front. It is absolutely something I admire, but I think it speaks to this, and it's my problem, because I've spoken about this before on the podcast, is if someone mistakes me for someone else or whatever, I'll just mostly the time just go along with it, because it's like, I just don't want to get into whatever the thing is, or if I'm confused, I won't ask. I'll just assume that I can work it out later. Whereas you are just happy to ask an obvious question. And like, I know that the reason I prefaced that was, I know that sounds
simple,
like an insult, but it's not. I think this is the secret to why you're good with anyone is I'm too embarrassed sometimes to not know about the thing they're talking about, whereas you are a bit more straightforward of going, I'm just happy to ask like simple questions about anything. And I think that's an approach. If that's your approach, then that you can take that to anything, because by asking those simple questions, you find out if at any stage, your method is, if at any stage you feel like you don't know what's going on, you will stop the person and ask them to clarify what's going on. Whereas I will be like, oh, I must have missed something. I'm a fucking idiot. I'm going to keep quiet. I don't want to embarrass myself.
Well, here's my secret. I never know what's going on all the time. That's why it's not hard for me to ask what's going on. Like, I was talking to a friend who we've had a lot of guests come stay over the last 3 weeks, which has been great, but also quite exhausting at the same time. And I was saying to the last one to stay that it's been so great because all the friends we've had come to stay are all really good conversationalists. Like, you can sit down and talk about anything. And the one thing I hate the most, and the reason why I'd say most people avoid social situations, is when you get into that conversation with someone that you've just met, it's your partner's workmate or whatever, and you start talking and it's obviously stilted or awkward or whatever. So that's when I will normally say something silly or irreverent or whatever to try and see if we can pivot this around. Okay, so we can't communicate this, how's the weather kind of thing. So, and then that person, every now and then, rather than go, oh, what a great offering, hey, let's just like get loose and like talk about, they'll say, that's a weird thing to say. That's an odd thing to bring up. And I'm always like, yeah, motherfucker. I've said something weird because this is an incredibly awkward situation. I'm trying to get some momentum going. Like, rather than just shutting it down, how about you just, look, we're in this weird social situation. We don't know each other, but we're expected to talk to each other. So let's just make it fun. All right? I'm offering you something silly. I'm saying something on you. Rather than stopping everything down and commenting on how weird that observation was. How about you just fucking roll with it? Because you are boring, and this is boring me, and I don't want to be in this situation.
I think I'm fine at small chat, but I'm not somebody who seeks it out, right? Like, I think that's my issue. Like that it's almost like I'm like, man, I do this for a living.
Yeah.
I like,
you're getting the bare minimum of what I'm capable of. I'm not on the clock. Like my heart's beating, there's lung air in my lungs, and I will vocalize occasionally, but that is it.
Well, it just feels like, the equivalent of if I was talking to a physiotherapist, I'd be like, all right, well, I'll be funny during this chat if you give my shoulders a rub during the chat.
Okay. Yeah, right. So it's a quid pro quo. Yeah, you're not just going to give away that gear for free. I was listening to a couple of comics talking on Aaron Gox and Broden talking on his footy podcast. And they were talking about like that thing of being asked, oh, you're a comedian, tell us a joke. And like, how they never have anything prepared. And Gox is like, I'm more of a storyteller. I'm not like a joke guy. But maybe as comedians, we should all have that, just a joke locked and loaded, so that when that inevitable question comes up, you can just deliver it without sort of putting too much brain power into it. Have you got one of those?
Yeah, I like to do a full 9-minute version of The Aristocrats. It's the and then I just turn to them and I say, what's the name of the act? The Aristocrats. 5 stars, mate. Thanks for listening.
Speaking of things which potentially could offend people, and this is a massive segue, but it does bring us back to the Patreon.
No. Okay, yes.
Is
yes.
So
I know what you're going to talk about. I believe I know what you're going to talk about. I've been observing this from a distance.
Yes,
but I believe I know what you're going to talk about.
A good reason to sign up for our Patreon, Will, is to get exclusive access to the art of James Fosdyke. And also,
by the way, just before we get into this, you could also get the video of this very podcast that you're listening to, which is on the Patreon. And during Charlie's last story, you would have got to see me get up and bash my chair back together because it was breaking. So it's good quality stuff.
It's really on the edge of your seat television, watching Will just slowly stand up, adjust his chair, almost knock over his microphone, and very slowly sit back down again.
Exclusive to Patreon.
You know what? We should release
for as little as $1 a month.
The highlight we should release this week is just that sequence of you, just the locked off camera of you getting a bit of chat, but with action music, like Michael Bay bombastic action music behind it. Let's make that happen. That's this week's promo.
Let's get the score from Oppenheimer.
Yeah. So Patreon is where we house all James Fosdyke's art, and James is an essential, integral part of TOFOP, and we give him complete creative freedom. We say, here's the episode, you name it, you create the artwork for it. We love everything you make.
Yes.
But in the context of what we've been talking about in terms of, we're now with a major corporation, we're looking for sponsorship and stuff. Piece of artwork came across last week for last week's episode, Death on a Dick, which was an amazing masterpiece. One of James' greatest bits of artwork of death riding an enormous cock. Now, as a piece of art, it was amazing. But in the initial draft, the cock...
And as an offer. Death on a Dick. I mean...
Great.
It's hard to go past in an episode. It's Death on a Dick out there. As an offer to James Fosdyke, who likes to put a dick or balls into pretty innocent and regular offers. I mean, it's...
the man can find dangling a dick in the most innocent of situations.
This is a guy who can find a dick in a haystack. That's what they've always said about Foz. And... like, we dangled the dick in front of his face. In a way, it is our fault.
100%. So I saw the artwork, was immediately impressed by the skill and the artistry behind it. But then my immediate thought was, that is the most graphic penis that James has ever drawn. And like we've seen
it was a massive dick. It was heaps. And
so
honestly,
much love and detail had gone into it, like the folds of the foreskin, the purplish hue of the helmet.
Not since the work of Larry Pickering. Like, have I seen such time and dedication to a big throbbing dick?
So I had a moment of like, okay, look, I look, as part of me is still that young, reckless, it's party times at TOFOP HQ, fuck the system, let's do it. And then the other part of me is like, we need to start making some money. Like a lot of people are working on this show now, and we've been doing it a long time.
Including James,
James, yeah. And so I had to make the executive decision of saying, James, I love this, but I don't think we can use it. There's only been one other time, I believe, in TOFOP history, which was, again, our fault, where we talked about the classic offensive T-shirt, The Happy Fisherman, in which you see a cartoon of a fisherman getting his dick sucked by a fish. And of course, like that became the artwork. And I said, James, I love it, but there is a fish filleting a man. And this is even before we had like a major multinational media corporation backing us.
Of course, McDonald's least popular burger, the filet-o fish.
Actually, that sounds delicious. I want to know what the secret sauce is, though, before I eat it.
Could I have a filet-o fish?
I mean, if you're willing to eat caviar, can you like not eat like whale sperm if it's on your filet-o fish?
People would eat. Again, we're just offering James so many options if we start riffing on whale
We haven't heard from him in
sperm.
days, and we go in and he's just like had conniptions because just so many ideas, so many dicks, and cum-soaked burgers in his head.
What is this foam on the side? Well, sir, you might be able to taste the ocean.
But is it weird though? Like, if people were like, "Ew, yuck, I'm not eating like whale spunk on my burger."
No,
it's like
people
you
eat
caviar. You're going to eat like fish's eggs.
Yeah, not at McDonald's. You don't eat caviar, but they do have bubble tea now. I think so. Close enough.
What is this bubble tea? This is the second time I've heard you mention bubble tea, and I've heard it a few times. What is bubble tea?
It's the most popular drink popular new craze on the planet. Bubble tea.
And is it like
not really sure? It's like
where does it come from? What is it?
I'm going to say Japan, but hopefully or Korea, like one of the trendy Asian countries.
One of those places. Like I hear you. Don't worry, we'll wink, wink. I hear what you're saying.
No, to me, it is associated with Asian culture. I don't know where the bubble tea. I'm going to look. You know what?
Yeah, I'm doing it. Bubble tea origins.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I miss the days where we just speculate wildly.
I mean, but the problem is that like I don't really know, and I was like, why would I just completely speculate on something I have no information about rather than just go to Wikipedia where we can find out what the information is.
I feel like they've popped up like so quickly, a bit like remember when
so quickly and influenced by Asian culture. That's what I do know. It's like an Asian,
and that's where
Asian
the K-pop
culture background
confusion could come in, right? Like
they tend to be in like a lot of them in shopping malls and stuff, but I associate them with the sort of hipster like Chinatown's part of like, your major cities, but they've crossed over. Like it was like when they started putting avocado on burgers at McDonald's, you knew that avocado had crossed over. And it's the same with like bubble teas and things like that. They're being appropriated by the mainstream beverage companies. So you know that like they're obviously big enough now that they always want to cash in on it.
You're getting celebs like Justin Bieber, and that's a good crossover. Justin Bieber and Justin Bieber tea, getting photographed with bubble tea, and I've heard it mentioned in like huge mainstream kind of podcasts and stuff. So, bubble tea or boba tea originated in Taiwan in the 1980s when a tea stand owner started adding flavors to her tea. But it was Lu Han Chi who first introduced Taiwan tapioca pearls in 1983. Yeah, the pearls. What do you make of the tapioca pearls?
I've never tried it because I don't like the idea
look of those pearls. Yeah, I'm the same. That's what's putting me off too. Like it looks futuristic and it scares this old man. Like it's some sci-fi movie where they're on an alien planet and they're served up like there's a giant slug excreting.
It's what a movie imagines people on a different planet drink.
Yeah, totally.
That's what it looks like to me. I'm like, that
looks more
weird
slurm?
I'm scared of it.
So the pearls could be added to any drink, whether it was green tea or black tea, but they were most commonly served in cold infusion milky tea, also called pearl milk tea. Oh, yeah. I love a bit of pearl milk tea. Unlike tea fruit, the tapioca pearls, boba, closely resembled bubbles, leading to the name bubble tea. Okay, well, that answers my next question. Mm-hmm. Being a multicultural country, Australia has always been lucky enough to see elements of food and drink from around the world. With a fairly significant Asian population, the cuisine has followed, and we are lucky enough to be introduced to a world of a delicious Asian beverage. The most notable to emerge is the famous bubble tea or boba tea. To put simply, bubble tea is a milky drink infused with some kind of tea and has small chewy balls called the boba at the bottom. Okay, that makes sense. Don't think I really want to try it. I don't know about icy milky tea. I like tea hot. I like tea like I like my podcasts. Misguided, directionless, and a bit bland.
White and bland.
Yeah. And without balls, for certain. Yes. Right. So James Foz. So I put the request in, and I said, look, we're just going to just have to find a way to make the dick less prominent. I wasn't saying get rid of the dick. Yeah. I thought he could either, last time he came up with
Now, by the way, I thought this was interesting because, again, I was like a coward watching this from the sidelines. Yeah. So I was like, you know what?
I mean, that's all right. I'll play bad cop. I mean, you could really fuck me over if you wanted to swoop in and be like, you know what, I like it. I think we should stand by it.
Yeah, and I think that my silence was me standing by you, but just still trying to seem cool. Yeah. I'll be like, I don't know, Mum's got something. Mum needs to have a conversation with you, and then I'm Dad, and I just go out to the garage and
nodding.
I just want to,
He's standing behind nodding. I feel like you have more kind of street cred. Like you've got more of that kind of anarchic sort of history and stuff.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
It's more damaging to your brand for you to be like, hey man, like censor this, rather than me, who's always been seen as a bit more mainstream and milk toast.
That's right, man. Exactly. Right. You played a cop, man. Yeah. Like it rubbed off a little.
Yeah. I did feel like such a fucking like wowzer, but it was just like it. I mean, I there's very few of James' artwork that I'm like, oh, that's too much. But that one, like, it's got to be bad.
It was too much. He must have known. He must have known.
Well, no one
that
chimed in.
Much.
Like, I didn't see, like, there was no, like, we've got three producers in on that chat.
I want James to still think I'm cool, man.
Well, he did until now. So this is all a long-winded way.
It was like a massive, like, it was just so, like, if like Cock needed a promo photo for a tour that Cock was doing, you'd be like, posters done.
Yeah. I mean, I could just sort of see like Telstra or Nike or someone ready to sign on the dotted line. They're like, let's just check out what's this TOFOP's all about. And then just seeing the giant cock and being like, oh, I don't know.
Maybe we are leaning the wrong way. Like we've always shied away from, this being a podcast that was supported by like sex aids or erection dysfunction pills or whatever, it is. But maybe we're wrong.
That's us.
Maybe we're denying our true self. Like, we have, the modern day Larry Pickering, like working almost exclusively for us. Like he loves drawing dicks. Maybe.
Oh my God. Should we do a calendar? A Larry Pickering style calendar? But not with celebs. Because that feels a bit invasive. But is there something that we can do where James gets to add dicks to something popular in popular culture? What would it be? What would it be? Adding cocks to something.
I'm glad that this has gone from a conversation about censoring penises to now be like, maybe we can put out a calendar.
Well, I think that's separate. That can be, you're right. Could we do it? Is there a way we can do it? So Gillian Anderson on her Instagram, she has this, like, it's not like a segment, but it's like a regular occurring gag where she just photographs things that look like dicks. So she'll see a cactus and she'll take a photo. No comment or anything. She'll just photo. So it's feels like every 10 pages or so on Gillian Anderson, there's just a dick. And so I'm like, what if James drew things that aren't dicks that look like dicks in his photorealistic style? Does that get us away with it? And we, without comment, we don't go Larry Pickering, like, lowest common denominator. It's just a calendar of artfully drawn phallic images. So like the first one is, I don't know, like one of those back massages that has the two balls on it and the wooden handle. You know the one? That's the first one. But really beautifully drawn, in James's kind of like most arty style. And then the next one could be like, what else? Like the top of an old mailbox, the ones that had the sort of more rounded heads, just really bulging and red, like one of those.
Yeah.
Your microphone. No, I'm just doing Steve Carell and Anchorman. Looking around the room, what can I see that's phallic? I just think that's a good workaround. James gets to indulge in his major passion. We get an extra bit of merch, but we don't scare away, a major sponsor.
I mean, look,
a calendar of things that look like dicks but aren't dicks.
The whole point of this is if you go to Patreon, you can see the dick. If you would like to see the dick, it is behind the paywall. The original unedited dick logo in its full dick glory.
Yeah,
is available.
Full pink and purple glory.
What I will say is I did like the decision that you as a narc made that to not completely censor James and his artistic vision. You were just like, hey, man, I want you to, like, I'm not saying you can't draw dicks. It's natural, Matt. If you want to draw dicks, I'm not here to kink shame you or art shame you or work shame you or whatever the relationship is that we have. But could you just tone the dick down a little? Could you fade the dick into the background a little? And then there was a discussion for the people at home. It didn't immediately go to what the end result is.
All right. Look, I'm going to read the chat just because I think this will clear up a lot of stuff. So look, there's the other two people, Foz and Mike, who also appear in this. If you don't want your contribution, we can bleep it out. But this is how it goes. So James sends through the artwork, which is Death riding a big purple penis. Here you go, guys. Mike the Third is the first to respond. He says, when it was mentioned in the app, I thought, geez, I hope he doesn't draw that. Foz responds, it was meat thrown to a hungry lion. Okay, so that was around about quarter to 6. 15 minutes later, I jump in. And the first thing I say is, oh, man, come on, Foz, we can't release that.
Yes.
And then I follow up with more stern words. It's hard enough trying to find sponsors as it is. And then
I thought it was brave of you to use the term hard enough. And it was brave of me to sit back and not join in.
Nothing. Then I said we could do a censored version, and then I give him some options, either silhouetted or covered, etc., and put this one on Patreon. James responds with good humor because I didn't know how this is going to go. Who here studied marketing at TAFE? Only me. And I offer an olive branch. I say, don't get me wrong, it's a masterpiece. And then in brackets, especially the piece. But we want a big-time sponsor, and giant cocks might be off-putting. I said to him, you can even bring back the censored artist character you busted out for the Happy Fisherman. Foz writes back, I'll do a more shady version, but you stifle me. You clip my wings. And then I say, I'm the machine you need to rage against. So he sends in a second version where he's shaded the penis a bit. I never thought I'd ever write this sentence, Will. But I wrote, I think 10% darker on the tip and we're good. Foz sends in a third version with a very dark tip. How's this? Great, thanks. And I said, now it just looks like some weird animal from the Never-Ending Story, which I think is a good place to leave it. But I don't like censoring Foz. I don't like being that guy. But we need to make this work for everyone, right?
Yes.
Does that count as a cancelling? I didn't cancel him. I cancelled a bit of artwork.
I mean, you didn't cancel him. The artwork is just turned down a little and still available behind a paywall. It's like, It's the peep show version of Patreon that we have put in, basically.
That's the idea, Will, not a calendar.
Okay.
We do the TOFOP Patreon peep show once a month.
It's
you want
the
some smut?
sealed section. Yes. So there's always a censored version that goes up. But on Patreon, we release another version of the art where there's just
explicit.
Just explicit genitals.
And then sometimes we can catfish. Yeah. So it's like you may think that the censored version, it's like, me on my knees and you standing with your head leaning back. But there's something obscuring the frame. And then it's like, if you want to do it. But then you see I'm just tying your shoelace or something like that. So every now and then we kind of catfish people.
I love it. This is the perfect model for our Patreon.
Smart.
It's like we
get into pornography.
Well, it's like an OnlyFans. It's a cartoon OnlyFans, basically.
Fucking hell. It's such a good idea. A cartoon OnlyFans. But does that mean we can? Oh no, hang on. We've got to talk to Foz. We can't have this on it. Well, because I was thinking maybe we can take requests. Like people on OnlyFans can ask for like foot pics and stuff like that. But we can't farm out Foz's services like that. It's his services to farm out. But I like the idea of the censored, uncensored artwork. Maybe like once a month.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying we actually do it on OnlyFans. But no. I am saying that, like...
we put Foz on OnlyFans as well. I think that's pretty good. Draw, you sexy hairy man. That's it, yeah. Get that HB2 pen out. It's HB2. Oh, my God. 2B? C? I don't know what I'm talking about.
I mean more like maybe at some stage Foz could take requests of, like, what two characters from... like, TOFOP history, would you like to see hook up? Like, what riff characters would you like? And then he can start, like, doing some to-order, commissions.
Smart. There used to be, at my local comic book shop in Melbourne, there was, like, a beaded curtain section where you went in and it was all just, like, super hardcore manga and just really, like, it was weird because I guess it counts as pornography, but it was so cartoonish, like giant meaty veiny cocks and like disproportionately large boobs and stuff like that. I mean, when it's a drawing, does it still count as pornography?
Yeah, well, like people use drawing as pornography all the time, right? Isn't there like a subset of
I guess so. Erotica.
Pornography that is like
is there a difference between erotica and pornography?
I mean, it just depends on perspective, right? There's probably a definitional difference, but like one person's pornography is another's.
One's SBS and one's Club X.
Like one person's erotica is like reading some great work of like, romance history or something like that. Whereas some other person's version of erotica is like watching Peter Griffin fuck Marge Simpson. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I guess so.
And isn't there like, again, not to wade into like Asian cultures that I'm not familiar with, but isn't like there a cartoon porn thing? Isn't that part of like?
I'm sure there is. I just don't think anything's off the table these days. Oh, yeah, cue the Michael Bay music. Here we go again. Another action-packed sequence that says, Will adjust his chair.
I thought this was not the broken chair, but I'm starting to suspect I was wrong about that.
What is the
either that or I have two broken chairs.
So is the cushion coming off the frame? What's going on with this adjustment?
So this chair, it's the dining table. This is since I've moved inside. So I'm on the dining table now because it stops Ramona barking so much when I'm out the back in the office. And so I'm set up, just ready to go here, do all my work from here. So I do spend a lot of time in the chair, but these chairs are like nice dining room chairs that like are connected by woodwork, like rather than by glue and nails and joints right. So it's
and like
stuff.
Pegs in holes and stuff.
Yeah.
Speaking
exactly.
of
erotica. Well, several times during this podcast, I have got up to jam a long piece of wood into a hole and just bash it in.
Yeah.
Oh,
not so fast.
Different music this
Slow
time.
Down. Take your
It's
time.
okay. I'm not going fast. I'm definitely taking my time.
I don't need to call the chair naughty. I don't know if that's a necessary part of putting the peg in the hole.
You dirty, dirty chair. You call me dirty.
Get in there.
So So however I'm sitting, and I believe I've done it to 2 chairs now, is that in the way that I sit, even though I don't feel like I'm moving, gradually as I sit in the chair, the peg comes out of the hole again and needs to be bashed back in.
You just reminded me then, talking about groaning when you're knocking pegs back in. I once had a massage in Melbourne a couple of years ago, and it was really good. It was like a Thai massage, and the woman was really good at it, but she had this habit of not an erotic way, more like a tennis player, like grunting with exertion. Like when she's when she'd sort of run the elbow over the muscle or the knot or whatever. And I remember thinking I don't know, this adds to the experience, having someone grunting over you like a frustrated mechanic as they're trying to kind of loosen your muscles.
I mean, I don't like it at all. Maybe for some people they're like, oh, it's great, they're putting in some effort, but for me, I'd be like, I'm trying to, for this to be peaceful. I would at least need the option if I was going in with a grunter, even if they were a great masseuse, but they were a known grunter. I think that they've got to be aware of that, right? That that might not be pleasant to the person getting a massage, and they've got to offer headphones or something.
But you know what? It worked both ways, because that bit was unpleasant. But at the same token, when she got something to release, she was happy, she'd give a yeah, like that. There was a kind of and you actually felt good about it, that she was it was almost like she was encouraging, the way you'll talk to a jar, trying to get it open. Come on. Yes. It was like that. And when she actually got to the yes, it was oh, yeah. I don't know if maybe that was part of the theater of it. It was just psychosomatic or something.
How did you feel about grunting in that circumstance? Did you feel like you were, if she got into a sore spot or whatever and you needed to make a noise, would you have felt less or more comfortable to grunt with a grunter?
More comfortable. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
Because I actually do, if something
giving
is
yourself permission
painful,
to grunt.
That's what it is. Out. Right? Give yourself permission to grunt. It's Vanessa Amorosi's song.
It was a real good song.
Is that what it is?
The original version.
Give yourself permission to grunt.
Well, we love it, Vanessa, but we just want to change one word. Instead of grunt, shine.
We gave our listeners permission to let us know if they're called Mikes. Tailing off here, Michael Schneider, he says, I'm a Michael. Almost nobody calls me Mike. Doesn't matter. You're a Mike to us, and that's all that counts. And this is interesting, just from the HR anarchists. That's how they have dubbed themselves. I used to work in the HR team at a tech startup. We had so many Michaels that we started to run out of nickname variants. Mike, Mikey. I added Michael as a category in our diversity reports. Sadly, the ratio of Michaels was higher than women. That is a damning indictment on your workplace, that you have more guys there called Mike or a variation of Michael than you have women. But I can't think of it. Mike, Mick, Mikey. That's it, right? That's Michael. There's
Mike.
And Mick.
Hang on. Mike.
Mikey, Mickey,
Mikey, Mickey, Michael, Mickey, whatever, Mickey something, Mickey with an a Mickey D, Mickey J, Mickey, so that's pretty adaptable, Mickey, because you can kind of add something to that. Yeah.
On the subject of Mikes and Micks, we talked about Mick being an insult to Irish people. And Jen got in touch with this. She says, hey there, I'm not a doctor, but I do work in community health. Healthcare professional.
Yeah.
With you discussing the Will Liam breakdown, it reminded me that Will talked about this a long time ago, maybe in relation to writing under Liam James when younger. Is that right? Did you have a pseudonym?
Yes, true. Okay. Absolutely. The remaining words of my name.
Oh, yes, of course. I have no idea. There's a little nonsense floating in my brain. The only reason I remember it is because it reminds me of a moment that my brother saved my name in his phone as Nifa, as in Jennifer, for years. He thought it was hilarious, and I only noticed when I was helping him find his phone. He is a twat. Also, mix, as in Irish, is definitely pejorative when used by an outside group, same as Paddy's Tim's is used in Glasgow to mean Irish Catholics, which I only learnt today is an anglicisation of Ty, as in Ty Kennelly. So it seems like if you want to insult an Irish person, call them some of the most generic Anglo-Saxon names like Tim, Mick, Paddy.
Right? It's just like, is that really an insult to just call them a common name of that country? Like that would be like calling Australians what? What's the most common Australian name, do you think?
I'd say like Jack.
What's your think? That's like what do you think the internet will have an answer to that? What is
John or Jack? Yeah, the most common Australian male name, John, Jack. Imagine if it's
popular names and most popular baby names of the past. Okay, let's see how we go here. The Guardian. Let's have a look. Close call. All right. A Guardian analysis of the trends in Australian baby names shows recent resurgence in some names from the early 1900s. Blah 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 blah. The last decade, Oliver, Jack, and Charlotte, very big. Come on,
Oliver.
Oliver. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So the most popular baby names in Australia since the 1930s. Okay, that's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Let's do a top 10 countdown. This is fun.
Okay. Oh. Top 10.
I'll give you clues.
Okay.
So these are all male names that I'm going with here. So the first one, I think it would be. I was surprised, that this is so high. But I imagine that most of the people who called it only go by the abbreviation of it and not by the full name.
Okay.
And it is a name that
this is number 10, is it?
This is number 10, and in its shortened and in its shortened form, it is a name that both women and men have. This is the longer version of it, which is the male name.
Okay, so there's a short version like Jesse.
You would have spent the first 5 letters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 letters of the name. You would have thought about a lot when you were at school.
Sex,
particularly at Catholic college.
God,
sex and close. God. What's another name? What's another name for God? Yeah, what's another name for
Yahweh?
Jesus? This is a popular boy's name in Australia.
Yahweh. I know 4 Yahwehs. Okay, so shortened version is a popular male and female name, but most people would go by the full length version. And as a young
most
Catholic,
people don't go by the full length version.
Oh, okay, so go by the short version.
This full version is like. Anyway,
what does a young Catholic boy? No, wait.
Yeah,
I want to figure. I'm going to you guys.
Okay,
what does
you
a
were
young
so close
Catholic
with Jesus?
Jesus.
So Jesus,
Mary. But
no,
Jesus.
God, Jesus,
Son.
Jesus
Christ. Christopher.
Yes, Christopher. Okay. There we go.
Okay. Oh God, I don't know if we've got enough time to do all 10. But let's if it's going to take that long to do one. Next one.
Well, I think this next one you'll go Wham.
George.
I mean, you got
Michael.
the clue right.
Andrew. Ridgely.
Yeah, Andrew. Okay.
Andrew. Yeah. Okay.
If you get this next one right, you'll be rich.
Richard. Richie Rich.
You'll be rich.
Rich.
If you're Brisbane and you got this one
Daniel.
right, Daniel. Okay, so
my first answer is Richie Rich, as if your clue for Richard is rich.
It's not. Number 7 is definitely not Harvey. Think about my last clue a bit more.
Bruce. Oh, no, definitely not Harvey. Harvey.
Yeah. It's not Harvey,
Norman.
but
Norman.
it is.
Harvey Norman.
Yeah, okay, you've got the form of what the clue was.
Okay, yeah. Definitely not Harvey.
Yeah.
Definitely not Harvey. And what was the previous one that we said? Richard.
Yeah. No. Daniel Rich.
Daniel Rich. That's not Harvey. Robert.
Robert Harvey was
all right.
the clue
I mean,
that I was
now that I
going
know
with.
you're working in another clue you're working in almost purely football sense, this will be easier.
Well, I was trying to dumb it down because you were so bad at it and we didn't have time. Not Liam, but
Chris. No, Luke.
Oh, sorry. Not this was a clue just from earlier in the podcast. My middle name.
James.
James, yes. So the sixth most popular boy's name is James.
This is like some kind of psychological test where your clues are making me guess.
Yes, I know. Not Mark, Luke, or John.
Paul? No, Matthew, Mark, Luke.
Not Mark, Luke, or John.
Oh, Matthew.
Matthew.
How many T's in that, Matthew? Double T
double
or
T.
one T?
Yeah,
okay.
Double T. Sorry, not Matthew, Mark, or Luke. John, yes, good. All right. I reckon this guy would be a great, if you were going for a drive with him, he'd be a good parker.
Johnny Reverse. A good parker. He would be a good parker.
Probably the best parker.
Car. Peter.
Now, do you want to lock in as the third most popular boy's name in Australia since 1930s, Peter or Car? I just need to be
clear. Locking Car, thanks. I feel like I'm on to a winner. And I'm never wrong.
So, we are down to the final two spots on our top 10 list.
Okay, so John came in at 4 or 5. That's surprising.
So I'll recap.
That would
the
be
top
my
10
number
for
one
you.
pick.
By the way, William came in at 13. Let's see if I can see a Charles.
No love for
here
Charles.
Somewhere.
Charles or Charlie.
Can't see on the top. Charlotte at 63. Oh, have I gone past it?
My God, is
Surely
Charles
it's in
not
there
even in the
somewhere.
top 50?
No,
we were so
be.
popular for
Surely.
so long.
I've gone past it, surely. I must have got this wrong. So
I would be stunned. I know so many Charlies. But maybe it's a generational thing.
Yeah, but I think that there would be lots of Charleses. Where is Charlotte? Anyway, I really can't see Charles on this list. It must be.
Have we Mandela affected the name Charlie as being popular? Charles or Charlie?
You're the only person called Charlie in the world. Okay, all right. Now this is doing my head in, flipping through all these things. So anyway, I can go.
All right,
let's.
I'm wrapped attention.
So here we go. This is the top 10 again. Christopher, Andrew, Daniel, Robert, James, Matthew, John, Peter. So we're down to the two most popular boys' names in Australia since 1930. All right,
okay.
In second place.
I'll just have some punts, right?
Yeah.
You mind if I have a few? Can I have like 3 punts?
Absolutely. Yep.
Is Samuel one of them?
Samuel is Sam or Samuel is not one of them. No.
Oh, okay. We've said James.
Samuel
said
came
John.
in at number 40 on the list.
Oh God. What about James and
we've already
John
said
have been
James.
done? Yeah. Okay. And John's 4 or 5. Okay. So, I mean, should we stick it in the TOFOP territory? I mean, would Mike? I mean, that would be. It's been from our research here at TOFOP Industries. Mike's only make 10% of the population, so I don't know that could be the most popular. Michael. What
an amazing fucking end to this arc it would be if we went onto the podcast one day and just said, I reckon Mike's like a really popular name. And then we just speculated about that. We got people to write in. We eventually found an article about it, and it turned out in number one place, Michael was the most popular boy's name since 1930. I mean, can you imagine how incredible that would be? Because that is Charlie Clausen, the number one male name in Australia.
Are you
since
serious?
1930.
Wow.
In your face, David coming in at number 2. Because it is a victory. Suck a big fat dick, David, because it is Michael.
Wow, I can't fucking believe we have had like a great conclusion to that half-baked bit.
I mean, who would have fucking thought it would pay off? I remember at the time you saying to me, are we really going to ask people? You're like, where? Where are they going to ask me? Where are they going to tell me that they're a Michael?
Wow, I'd like to apologise formally, Will. You knew what you were doing.
No, I did not. I need to point out, I did not know what I was doing.
Before we go, just a couple more emails I want to read you. If you do want to get in touch with us, you can. Just go to tofop.com. There's a little contact menu there. You can send us an email. Or you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at TOFOP. While you're there at tofop.com, you might want to check out some of our other great podcasts, including one called Two Guys, One Urn, which is Will's cricket series on the Ashes. A lot of love rolling in for this podcast, Will. This is from Mel. She says, hello, just a quick note to say how much I'm enjoying your cricket adjacent podcast. I listened to the first episode on a flight from New Zealand after taking some strong edibles, and it really set the tone for the series. Can you please encourage Howie to have Adam Zwar on the Artist series? Would be perfect listening for my next international flight. Ta. Also, if you haven't already been thinking about keeping the pod going over summer, you seriously need to consider it, which seems to be a common
I am considering it. I've enjoyed it. If people continue to enjoy it, if people the best way that you could guarantee that is spread the word. If you think there is somebody,
if we get the numbers up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a podcast that we can do without having to create like giant penises for the artwork. Like there's no controversy around Two Guys, One Urn yet.
I mean, strap in, who knows? Let's see how this series goes. I might hate cricket again by the end of this series, but if you can check that out in the TOFOP feed, and thank you to everybody who's been so supportive of it.
Well, Alexi is one of those people. It says, I've really enjoyed the cricket chat on Two Guys, One Urn over the past few months. I also wanted to ask if you guys are looking to put out more cricket-related podcasts beyond the end of this current Ashes. There's plenty of stuff you could cover, this year's World Cup, the other Aussie Test, or even the Big Bash. I know you guys put a lot of time into the podcast and have other commitments, so I completely understand if you don't have time to do more episodes, but I'd like to hear it if you did. That's the most polite request for a show ever.
That's a nice way to ask.
Yeah, that's it. Let that be a listen to you all. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to, but it's based on exactly what that correspondent just said, which is it would be time, and if we're watching things, and I'm not going to put any pressure on it to happen, but this series was a great one to experiment with it because obviously, like most of the tests, there was sort of like a week gap in between. It was a limited period of time. It was a good focus of everybody's attention. I'm not sure everybody will be necessarily as interested in the Australia versus the West Indies series or whatever, but I have just enjoyed the general cricket chat with the various guests, and it's been interesting for me to discover how many people are actually still big cricket fans. Like I didn't realize there was, I guess because there isn't as many podcasts or like places for them to chat in that environment. So mostly when I got people on, it was just nice to just have a chat about cricket and have an opportunity to do that in a long form. So I very much enjoyed it, and I would love to go to the Ashes next time. And so if I could leverage the podcast to somehow make that happen, I'd be definitely into that.
Well, we get that Qantas sponsorship. We just make sure we keep Foz away from the Two Guys, One Urn artwork, and we can get Qantas.
I mean, we could just go, it's a plane, put wings on it, Foz. You're basically drawing a plane already. Just put some wings on the dick. That's a plane. There you go.
Final bit of housekeeping. Please support us on Patreon. I know we've joked about it. We've talked about it a lot today, but it is the best way still to support the show. Will, Gruen's back.
Yeah, Gruen's back. ABC iView is the place to catch all the episodes of Gruen. I am also, for Sydney people, doing a run of my What You Talking About, Will improvised stand-up shows at the Sydney Comedy Store. I would love you to come along to those. They're always fun to do, but they're particularly fun to do when I'm not putting together a new show, and they can just very much be me just mucking around in the room doing stuff that'll never be seen again, and they're always the most fun versions of that show. So Sydney Comedy Store, they're on Saturday afternoons, very...
What else you got to do on a Saturday afternoon? Come on.
I mean,
in Sydney on a Saturday.
You know what the
afternoon.
thing? I don't be like that. It's
No,
actually.
I'm serious.
It's actually
a good see some comedy.
It's a good fun vibe. You get out of there early. I get home to watch the end of the cricket or whatever, the footy or whatever it is that I want to do.
Enough time to have a bath.
So it all works out fine for everybody. But come and see those. But I would say yes, Two Guys, One Urn will be going until the end of the Ashes, and Willosophy is still coming out weekly. You can find that on the Willosophy feed, and our football adjacent podcast, Two Guys, One Cup, is available exclusively on the Listener app. And of course, that will be going all the way to the end of the football season. So make sure that you check out those. And I know all podcasts say these things, but the reason that they say these things is because at least some of them help. The best way you can support the show is Patreon, but the second best way is just by telling somebody about it. If you think somebody would enjoy the cricket podcast, tell them about that. If you think someone will enjoy the football podcast, or just, might be interested in dipping, their toe into the TOFOP world, then that's a way that you can support the podcast, rate, review it, do all those sort of things. But thank you very much for listening. I'm going to spend a couple of weeks trying to fix this fucking chair.
I'm Charlie Clausen.
I'm Will Anderson.
How long? Not long. Everyone relax.
Fucking stupid.
Listener.